Hey guys, Rick Betancourt here. Today we're going to talk about creating a document for you and formatting it for your books. So we're going to take a blank document. I'm going to show you a few steps on using a blank document and creating from scratch using Word's native styles, how to create chapters and headings using the styles, how to format the document to look good for publishing, say on Kindle, for instance, and then how to create a table of contents, all through using heading styles in Word. So right here we have a blank document, as you can see, and I'm going to start by creating chapters. So chapter, for instance, chapter 1. And below that, I'm going to put some blank text, and you can use the rand function for this. For instance, that's just saying that we'll create randomly 29 paragraphs of 5 sentences each. And let's say this is chapter 2, and then we'll do another rand, make this a shorter chapter. And let's say chapter 3, rand, we'll make this a little bit longer with more text. Okay, so now we have a bunch of random text in here with our chapters. What I'm going to do next is make the chapters actually a heading style. And to do that, up in your ribbon here, you'll see that every paragraph, really, and you notice I have my paragraph formatting on, which is this little show hide thing, so I can see where the hard returns are, which is very important when we start using styles. So I'm just gonna, for this purposes, I'm gonna make chapters heading 1. And all I need to do is click heading 1, be in on the actual text. Let me undo that so you can see. So I'm in the actual paragraph anywhere. I can have it highlighted. I don't necessarily have to have it highlighted, but I need to be inside somewhere between this little backwards P and the words in the letter C. So if I just click heading 1, that becomes chapter heading 1. If I go down and find chapter 2, I can make that a heading 1 as well. And for this purposes, I'm going to have all of my chapters heading 1. Another shortcut is to do Control-Alt-1, and that automatically assigns that text to the heading style 1. We'll talk more about other heading styles and other styles as well, but for now, let's just stick with the chapter heading 1. One thing I like to do when I'm using heading styles is to show my navigation pane. So over here you'll notice it's just gray, and right now the view that I'm in is the print layout, which I tend to like. So I'm going to hit navigation pane, and over here you'll see that chapter 1, 2, and 3 are listed here, and I can just bounce back and forth. I can click chapter 1 and go in between these chapters very easily. So I find that very helpful to move around. And sometimes I'll name my chapters when I'm working on it. I won't necessarily name them chapter 1, chapter 2, but I'll name them, and I'll show you how to do that later. But just to name them something specific so I know how to get around and remember what that chapter is about. Next, we're going to update styles. So as I mentioned, everything in Word is based off of a style, and most things are the normal style. So if I click in this first paragraph, you'll see that up here in my heading style, it's changed to, it's showing, if you see the little orange, that this paragraph is in the normal style. That's essentially what that's saying. If I click back to chapter 3, then you'll see the heading 1 is selected so that I'm in heading 1 style. But I'm going to click into this paragraph, and I don't have to highlight anything to make changes into it, because Word knows that this entire paragraph, and the entire paragraph is from here all the way down to this backwards P. Because Word knows that this is one paragraph, any changes I make are going to be specific to that paragraph that I make. So here I'm going to change my formatting, for instance, to be the first line indented, and I don't like it to be the first line to be indented a whole half margin, a whole half inch rather. I'll do it, say 0.2. Okay, and if I click OK, you'll notice that it indented, first of all. But because the way I did that, I went up to paragraph formatting, and this little drop down here will allow you to do paragraph formatting. There's other ways to do it. You can go right click and do paragraph. It'll bring up the same text box. You can also do it from the home menu. But because I just did it to that one paragraph, it just made the change to that one paragraph. I can also tell Word to update everything that's in normal style, which is everything. Here's normal style, here's normal style. I can automatically update normal, which is the style called normal, to match the selection. So the selection I'm in right now is this paragraph. So I'm going to update normal to match that paragraph essentially. So if I do that, you'll see that every subsequent normal style has changed to an indent. So that's one real quick way to make changes on the fly. It's probably more noticeable when we do it to a chapter heading. So let's do the same to a chapter heading. And I'm going to do this change a little bit differently. I'm going to go up to heading, and I'm going to, I'm going to go up to heading, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to modify the heading style. So now what I'm doing is everything that's in my document that's a heading 1, I am now going to make a change to. So this is a real quick way to make a change that, say, I don't want blue font. I want it to be automatically black. I don't necessarily need, well, we'll keep it bold. And 14 style is fine. Okay. And then I'm also going to do under paragraph, instead of having it left aligned, I'm going to center it. And I don't need the first line indented 0.2 on my heading styles. I'm not going to put any so that it's perfectly centered. So heading 1, and now you'll see chapter 1, or all heading 1s, are now black, set in perfectly centered. And if I just click back and forth, you'll see that change. Now another thing that I like to do with my heading styles is probably have a little bit of a space after each one. Now I could, and a lot of people do this, just put a hard return after each one, and that's really not the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to have it embedded within the style. So I'm going to make a change here, and then I'm going to apply it after the fact to all the styles, so you can see how I do that. So again, I'm going to make a change to this so that I'm going to add 24 points after the heading style. So I'm going to go into a paragraph, because I'm dealing with paragraph information, and you'll see here that the spacing before is 24 points. Let me just show you. So there's 24 points, or basically 2 hard returns, because most things are 12 points. 2 hard return, or 24 points before. I'm also going to make 24 points after. So 24 points, and hit OK, and you'll see how there's a nice perfect space between the chapter. Now you notice, because I just applied it to this paragraph, just to the words chapter 1, if I go to chapter 2 still has it doesn't have the bigger space. So I'm going to go back to chapter 1 using my navigation pane, and right-clicking on heading 1, I can update heading 1 to match the selection. So everything that's heading 1 will now look exactly like this chapter 1 does, which will have the 24 points. So update heading 1. Now if I go to chapter 2, you'll see that it has the space. Chapter 3 has the space as well. Let's next make a table of contents. So I just went to the very top of the document, and to do that I go to Control Home. I'm going to hit a hard return. Go back up. Now if you notice that because I put a hard return before the C, I'll do another one. This is actually another heading 1 style. I don't need them to be heading 1 styles. I want them to be the default normal style, so I really just need one. So I'm going to delete one, and then I'm going to hit normal. And just by clicking normal, this makes it the normal style. Now I'm going to automatically create a table of contents. So I'm going to go up to References and Table of Contents, and I usually pick this Automatic Table 2 just because it's easy. Table of Contents. And you'll see Word has automatically created a table of contents for me with Chapter 1 on page 1, Chapter 2 starts on page 6, and Chapter 3 starts on page 7. Now for Kindle you don't need page numbers because there are no page numbers in an ebook, but and I'll show you how to get rid of that in a minute. But for this purposes, I just wanted to show you how to insert a table of contents. Now you'll notice, and I'm going to go to View, Full Screen View, and you'll see that, table of contents should really be its own page. Chapter 1 should start on its own page, and if I page through Chapter 2, so each chapter, ideally, I'd like to have on its own page, and I can do that through styles. So I'm going to go to Chapter 1. Oops, I clicked Chapter 2. Chapter 1, and I'm going to make a change to the style so that everything with Chapter 1 has a page break before it. So I'm going to right-click on heading 1, modify, and under paragraph, under format paragraph at the bottom, on the tab lines and page breaks, there's a checkbox here, a page break before. So on a page break before, hit OK, and hit OK, and you'll see that now Chapter 1 starts on its own page, Chapter 2 starts on its own page, and Chapter 3 starts on its own page. So anything with a heading style starts on its own page. And if we look in the full screen view, I also use the, well, I'll show you how I did it in a second. But so we'll go back. This is full screen view. Everything's fairly nicely formatted with each chapter starting on its own page. So that I usually toggle between the views of print layout and full screen layout. You can also do it at the very bottom of the page of the Word document. Here's it'll show you that I'm in print layout and full screen layout, and I'm in Office Word 2010. So the newer versions might be slightly different, but you can find the functionality is the same. It may be in different locations. So let's just make another change. This is going to be kind of a long video, but I think you can handle it. I'm going to go to Chapter 1, and some things I like to do is a couple things. As I mentioned before, when I'm working on a document, I may want to say, instead of naming it Chapter 1, I may say, and I'm just going to change intro main character or something silly. Chapter 2, let's say David meets Christine, and then Chapter 3, I don't know, protagonist. Oops, I didn't spell that right. Protagonist enters, scene enters. I didn't spell enters right either. And you can also see that I have an extra space, another pet peeve of mine, a space before the actual hard return. So I'm going to hit my delete key and bring that in so that there shouldn't be any spaces after your text or in a paragraph. Okay, so that made the changes you'll see in my navigation pane. But if I go to my table of contents, my table of contents still says Chapter 1, Chapter 2. I can simply right-click it and say Update Field and just update the entire table. And now all of a sudden, whatever is in heading style is going to show in your table of contents. And you'll see the page numbers also change because we actually made page numbers before that. One other thing that I like to do is sometimes, even though I'm going to really make some big changes here. All right, so let's do, sometimes I like to break out the books into parts. So, and you'll see this in text, there's part 1. And then you have your chapters. And then let's say at the very end, we go to part 2. And I'm going to do Control Alt and make my parts the heading style 1. And we'll go back and change chapters to heading level 2, heading style 2 in a second. But so heading 1 is part 2. And then I'm going to say chapter. Actually, we were naming them, right? So David becomes a witch. And then we do equals rand for my just blank text, and we'll make this a short chapter. All right. So now I'm going to make David becomes a witch is actually the chapter title. So I'm going to change my chapters from, they are right now heading 1, which if I know I'm moving around fast, but you can rewatch the video and slow it down. If I update the heading styles, everything being a heading 1 doesn't really, part 1 should be a little bit different than my chapter styles. They should be indented here, and you'd probably want them to look maybe a little bit different too. So I'm going to go to my chapters, and I'm going to make these heading 2. All my chapters now heading 2 instead of heading 1. And David becomes a witch is heading 2. Now, again, it's got that blue formatting. I may not want blue formatting, so how do I change that? I can change it, and I can just be within one of these heading styles and make the change and then apply all heading style changes, or I can go directly and modify the heading style. I'm going to make it black, and I'm going to make it centered, and I don't need a first line indent. There's other ways we could have done this, but and I'm also going to do 24 points afterward. Okay, and then I'm going to apply that. Now, maybe kind of going fast here. The 24 points afterward I just made to this David becomes a witch chapter. If you go back to protagonist enters, that one isn't. For those, and these aren't. So I'm going to update heading 2 to match the selection, so that now they each have. And if I go to my table of contents and update that, you'll see now it looks a little bit cleaner with the heading styles indented some. One last thing is usually on Kindles, what's also nice about table of contents is these are hyperlinks, so I can click, like I can in my navigation pane, I can click and it'll bring me to these sections. So go back to my TOC. So if I click on David becomes a witch, it changes to that. It goes right to that chapter. I just noticed that I forgot to put in a page break before. So here we'll have another little review of how to make a change so that so if I go to protagonist enters, you'll see that there's no paragraph, there's no page break before that. So modify, format, paragraph, line page breaks, page break before, okay, okay. So now every chapter 2 begins on its own page. And if I go to my full screen view, I can see what it looks like when it's printed or in a Kindle. You'll see part 1 is on its own. And then we got our main characters, and we can do, I'd probably make better formatting. Maybe there's formatting where you can start the part in the middle of the page. That would probably look better. We can talk about those in some other video. But this looks fairly decent. I'm going to go back to my table of contents, and by being inside the table of contents, if I go to references, table of contents, insert table of contents, I can take off page numbers and click OK. Do I want to replace the table of contents? Yes. So even though this may not look that great from a printing perspective because you don't know what page number it is, but in a Kindle, you don't want the page numbers to show because the page numbers don't exist in a Kindle. But by doing it this way, they're still clickable when you upload them to Amazon or whatever source you're using for your ebooks. So that was kind of a lengthy video, but just as a real quick summary, we talked about changing styles using normal styles, which is the basis of pretty much every style in the Word base template. Normal style, we talked about heading styles. We used heading 1 and heading 2 to create our parts and our chapters. We talked about page breaks and formatting and making those changes to apply very quickly a change across an entire document. And then we learned how to create our TOC. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me at rickbetancourt.com and be sure to sign up for my email newsletters. Talk to you later. Thanks.